Hello everyone, welcome to the weekly update video for the 21st of November, and hopefully this should be relatively short, but I just wanted to talk about a couple of discoveries that have been made with Microsoft 2020, of course, over the past week. Main thanks goes to the individuals who have either been liaising with developers to support them in making things more accessible, mainly Andy with First Officer, and Josh, of course, I know, who's also been doing testing. I think John has the beta, and Rob, and then also, of course, to Rob for looking into some of the other applications that we're going to discuss, or at least methodologies to get around some of the quirks of the simulator. The main one, which we'll talk about first, being key mappings. So there are a couple of things here. The first is that an application was discovered by Rob called Access and O's, and the developer seems very keen to support accessibility here. But essentially, this is a very versatile application with a lot of functions. At its core, it allows you to make key mappings for the simulator, of course, but you can also do a lot more than that. You can create key mappings through PMBG variables as well. You can also create sequences and flows which will activate at hotkeys. You can set up essentially like a first officer type situation if you really wanted to do that, using LVARs and things like that. It also has a WebFMC, so currently the PMBG FMC you can use with it to view the FMC, although it essentially has each letter on a new line, so it's not really very readable. The main thing about the WebFMC is looking for other aircraft as well, so it does support the fly-by-wire, it does support the Phoenix A320, for example, but he's going to have to do some work to make that more usable. But he seems very interested in this. The main thing he's going to look at first is the actual interface itself, so it is perfectly doable right now. Don't get me wrong, but there are definitely things that could be improved, and of course, like I said, the WebFMC needs to be improved. But this was used initially because there was issues surrounding the key mappings in terms of default controls within Microsoft Flight Simulator itself. This has now been resolved, so you won't need Access and O's if you're just trying to add some key mappings in general. This was a problem if you have a joystick or a honeycomb or anything like that. It's going to be quite a big problem with Microsoft. It still is a bit of an issue, but there is a workaround. So a lot of these devices do have default profiles, so you will be able to just set up with the default profile and use your joystick or whatever, provided one exists. If it's a Thrustmaster or something like that, it probably will. Same situation with the Honeycomb Bravo. However, it won't stop there. You may want to add custom mappings, you may want to change buttons around. The problem is that although you can actually search for a particular mapping and you can find it, once you go into that, it becomes inaccessible. The narration doesn't really read items on the menu, so it doesn't read, for example, to find the scan for input option. And this wasn't too much of a big deal, so it will read when you load in to that dialogue through narration the order of the buttons, although it won't read when you arrow around. So the difficulty was finding which button was going to be on the focus when you were using the arrows. The idea was, okay, well, let's use the click sound. So the first click must be the first button, which is scan for input. However, it actually isn't. There is a silent placeholder or a silent area where it doesn't actually click, and that is the first button for scanning for inputs. So if you press on this area, again, don't mind that it doesn't click when you are trying to find it. It will still be there. You can scan for an input as you would in P3D. Press the button, move the axis, whatever. And that way will allow you to create inputs through the default simulator. So not ideal. Microsoft obviously need to improve on it, but Asobo, Microsoft, whatever, have been very responsive through the information that they've received on this issue, and it's possible that during the next beta this will be fixed, and they certainly seem like they're going to actually do something about it. It wasn't just well, we'll give it to the development team and see what happens. They were actually very helpful in providing detailed instructions so that we could figure out, or Rob could figure out, as in this case, how the dialogue worked and how we were going to use it to make assignments, which is obviously very important. Other things to talk about is first officer. So we are still waiting on the first officer update. It was supposed to be out on the 15th of November. However, there have been some improvements. So there is a beta, I should add. If you want to try out first officer next, it's going to state you can get the beta. Essentially what he has done is initially, as we know, he tried changing around and adding GUI stops and whatever. That didn't really work as we would like. So now what he's done is added what he's calling a menu button feature. Essentially just you hit Alt and you can navigate through the controls that you would previously have had to have a golden cursor profile for in a menu. Now, of course, he still needs to do some work on some of the dialogues that correspond to each of these sections when you actually go into them. But in terms of getting to them, this is very helpful. So you no longer need sighted assistance with the creation of a golden cursor profile. So this seems to be better. This is in the beta, so we don't know if he's going to release it as is, or whether he's going to work on some of the dialogues. I guess it depends how much work it is, but hopefully he works on polishing this a little bit. But yeah, keep your eyes out. Hopefully it will be released very soon. Yeah, it was the 15th it was supposed to be released, the 19th of November here, that he last updated the post on his forum, where you can see the changelog. So yeah, hopefully he will get to working on a bit more accessibility, and then we'll be there. The PMBG in general has been improving in terms of our ability to fly from A to B with little incident. Just little things here and there, figuring out where the assist should be, ensuring that all the key mappings are correct, as I've said. The first officer issues are certainly things you can work around. There are issues, if you try and do a turnaround, you may have issues with the connection of the GPU. You might have to leave it on APU. There's just some little random things that have been encountered. Generally, it seems better to use Tramp at the moment to reposition. Sometimes TFM won't put you quite on the center line. There have been instances of people running off the runway. I guess if it's a longer runway, maybe you'll be okay, but Tramp certainly seems to work. Little note on GSX as well. That is hopefully going to be integrated into First Officer at some point in the future. Don't see why not. You can currently use the PMBG FMC for pushback, so you can specify how many degrees you want the nose turn left or right, etc., and then it'll do the pushback. It's not quite as accurate as GSX. There have been some concerns about it pushing you off the airport. However, it's probably the best you're going to get right now if you really want to do pushback. But the idea is hopefully GSX will be integrated into First Officer so that when you do a pushback, you will actually get First Officer using that instead of the default pushback, as it does now with boarding. I believe it actually integrates GSX boarding. So shouldn't be too difficult for the developer to add, but obviously right now accessibility in general is more of a concern. But yeah, the first PMDG flight was done on VATSIM. Rob did that. Yeah, I mean, unless someone else did it before, but either way, it's pretty consistent now. I've done several flights on VATSIM over the weekend, I believe, from Rob. So, and people just in general are completing a lot of VATSIM flights. In the PMDG, previously, so it's really not that different in terms of Microsoft and operating the aircraft and the FMC. Everything's relatively similar. It's just really more the logistics and getting the simulator to work properly before going on VATSIM, so that you don't have issues on your, you wouldn't want to do your first flights and test flights on VATSIM, of course. But yeah, people generally now are getting from A to B with much less of an issue. TFM, as we know, should hopefully have a release by Christmas break where you'll be able to pretty much say that you've got the full 737. And we'll see if that's on schedule, but either way, you were able to fly it with first officer, with TFM, and access all the panels that are currently available within the preview without stuttering. I believe that is something that is being actively worked on and has pretty much been alleviated. I know some people, even with the preview build of a few weeks ago, didn't have this problem if they had a high-end system, i.e. a 20 or 30 series graphics card, but especially for those with slightly lower end systems, there was stuttering problems with panels, with the CDU, with repositioning to runways or whatever, using that dialogue. Even just setting the ILS, there was a lot of issues surrounding external dialogues, but from what I hear, that's been pretty much alleviated, so that you should have very minor issues, if any. So yeah, that's also another good thing, that you can actually use external dialogues in TFM with very little issue. And I should also point out just a few VATSIM events that have come up over the past week or so. The Fly and Sea Santa event on the 10th of November will be the 10th of December, not November, it's already passed. December will be open for bookings on the 26th of November. So you can actually go in and book an arrival slot into Tromsø, Kiruna, or Rovaniemi. This is a fun event where you just fly from anywhere you like. There's no specified departure, you just book an arrival time and make sure you turn up on time. Always a lot of holding and things because they're quite small airports, but the idea is flying down to the Lapland kind of area. It's always pretty fun. The other event is the Cross the Ditch event on the 3rd of December, so exactly a week before Fly and Sea Santa, and you can actually go and book for that now. They have 5 what they're calling waves, essentially legs, that you can book around Australia, New Zealand. You'll get the chance to hopefully cross the ditch, cross from Australia over to New Zealand. It's a really good chance to get some ATC in terms of oceanic, practice your HF radio skills, position report skills, which is something they actually do, position reports over this area. So if you're looking for that and you don't want to do a whole flight over the Atlantic or something, then you can actually do this and get like a 2-3 hour flight in, and also be able to practice your oceanic skills. It's pretty cool. Okay, I think that's going to do it. So have a great week, and I'll see you in the next weekly update video.